Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world, Eclipse fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show, and my co-pilot once again. I think you're getting to know him a little bit more every time. You like the when I turn the controls over to him, he puts on those feather-like landings. Andy Backstrom, welcome back to the Tim May Show. Welcome back into the co-pilot cockpit seat.
Tim, it's always good to be here to be the co-pilot.
You also like to hear me say co-pilot cockpit seat, don't you? Because I enunciate.
It's good alliteration.
Thank
It's
you
a
very
journalist
much.
in you.
I'm still kind of like, I'm still blinking a little funny because I went to, as we record this, I just gotten back a couple hours ago from seeing the Eclipse. Uh, it was actually pretty damn cool, man, when that Corona or wherever it is just all of a sudden blossoms out and you're allowed to take off your your eclipse watching glasses. You just look at the sun or what's coming around the moon. It was crazy. And we were up at a high school, Triad High School, northwest of where I live here, west of Hilliard, Ohio. And kind of like on a hilly little area there. It was really one of the more beautiful parts of the state, near where Tavian St. Clair from Bell Fountain, near where he lives, over in that area. But it was so cool when it got darker and darker, and then it went really dark or pretty dark. I mean, all the lights came on in the parking lot, automatic lights, and it was crazy. The temperature dropped about 10 or 12 degrees, and it was, if you only get to see it once in your life, it's cool. That's the only total eclipse I've ever seen live. I've seen partials a lot, but it was pretty cool. Anders, I was wondering, did you get a chance to see it?
Absolutely, yeah. I was down here in the short north area, and like you're saying, I think the moment where the temperature dropped and then all the street lamps came on, that's what I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. Only lasted for a few minutes, that peak of it in totality, but super cool and much different from the 2017 eclipse that we got that was neat, but it didn't really have the same effect. It didn't change like the entire surroundings and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like getting name brand potato chips and off name brand potato chips, right? There's
Yep.
just something about name brand potato chips that do it, and that's definitely it was so cool. But I digress as I usually do. We're here to talk about Ohio State football in many forms and fashion. And by the way, coming up, a little insert in our conversation is going to be a little conversation with Steve Wiltfong, who just got hired by On3 last week, on3.com, which makes him part of our puts him under our wing, uh, or I'm not sure whose wing we're under, whether On3's under our wing or we're under On3's wing, because our former boss is now running the show at On3, Will Crawl, but Steve Wiltfong, a major get, if in fact, if we want to stay in the recruiting parlance, which he is definitely one of the major players in covering recruiting out there, and I'm looking forward. Think you would be too. Looking forward to the conversation with Steve Wiltfong because he and I've known each other for a long time, but I haven't had him on my show here since I retired from the Columbus Dispatch. I used to talk to him a lot for stories there, but haven't had him on my show here because he was part of the competition until now. And now he's under the On3 umbrella, which just seems to be getting larger and larger. It's more like the On3 golf umbrella as we speak. And I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. But getting back to you, man, as we record this late on a Monday, uh, Ohio State headed toward its spring game in quotes or air quotes, as I'm throwing them up there on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Uh, it is a basically glorified scrimmage, but it's fun to watch. We're still not sure exactly what form it will take, whether it'll be ones versus twos, whether they're going to mix it up a lot. I would think they're going to have some complete groups out there, don't you?
I'd hope so. It's going to be on Fox. People are going to be watching, nationally televised for the first time for Ohio State. Maybe that's why they'll have even less being shown. I don't know. Yeah, I guess Chip Kelly doesn't want to give too much away, but
No.
it'll be fun to just see those young guys out there. I think that's always the biggest thing with the spring game is just seeing some of those freshmen. Last year was Carnell Tate had a touchdown. Noah Rogers had a touchdown. I know he's not with the program anymore, but those guys that are first year players, early enrollees that really get to benefit from that experience of, anywhere from to 100,000 people in the shoe. If it's good weather, I mean, they might sell that thing out. And that's always exciting and just not the norm for spring games across the country. I mean, some places down south do that, but up north, I mean, that is just a rare thing to have a spring game with 75 plus thousand people.
Yeah, a year and a half, 2 years ago, you matriculated from covering Boston College, and for several years. And what did they draw for a spring scrimmage, a spring game?
Maybe like 2 or 3 thousand people, like just minimal attendance. It is a different world at Ohio State, but that's something that's good for these players to get used to. I mean, that's a different kind of intensity that is brought in the shoe, and it's something that's going to be the norm for them every Saturday. And it's better to get used to that now on a spring day in April than to be thrown right into the mix now in, I guess, late August is when the season starts for the 2024 campaign. But yeah, I think it'll be a good introduction for everyone. And hopefully this time we actually do get both quarterbacks that are competing for the starting role, or maybe three quarterbacks competing for the starting role to all play. Last year, of course, Devin Brown was hurt for the spring game. We only got to see Kyle McCord and Tristan Gebbia.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, Devin Brown, just when his moment comes, something happens. And we'll get into that in a minute. I wanted to ask you this though. You Are you ever amazed? I mean, even now you've been covering Ohio State, sports, covering basketball too, and doing a damn good job there. A lot of news on that side, huh? On
Yeah.
both sides of that, men's and women's over the last year. But are you still ever amazed by Ohio State compared to Boston College from the standpoint of just the attention it gets, attention it draws, and basically the backing from a fan standpoint that you've seen in the last 2 years you've been covering this?
Yeah, because I think at every program, there's going to be fan base components that are just super passionate through the off season and never stops. There's always that small group for whatever Power Five program it is, even some of the Group of Five schools, you get some of that. But for Ohio State, it is a pretty much national fan base across the country that never stops. And again, the spring game last year was a big like eye opener for me of just like it's going to be packed during the regular season, but to have the tailgating for hours before the game, to have 80, 90,000 people show up for really, as you said, a glorified exhibition or even a practice,
Yeah,
really just the energy and the excitement around the program that's nonstop. I mean, this place is Ohio State 24/7 all the time. And I think that's so exciting. I mean, it is the pro team here for football. And you can't undersell that at all. And I think that helps in recruiting so much. And we talked to these guys, even like a Caleb Downs, who, yeah, he played in Tuscaloosa, which is a similar effect. You get the best of both worlds because this is more of a city than Tuscaloosa is in terms of, a downtown feel. So,
yeah,
it's cool to hear these guys come from different places across the country and hear their perspective on playing here because they see it and they feel it too.
yeah. Well, when I brought that up, I was just saying, and that's the nickname I gave him a long time ago. And as his high school coach, I'd said his high school coach when I had him on right after Julian Sayin committed to Ohio State in the transfer portal. Never heard that before, have you? He goes, "Oh no." Dude, let's talk about him before we talk about Dallan Hayden's, apparent decision to move on. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Obviously, April 16th is it or 15th? The transfer portal opens again. You had a feeling somebody's going to pop out of Ohio State's largesse on the offensive side of the ball, but we'll get to that in a moment. But Julian Sayin losing his black stripe quarterback. We all saw him, several days ago in what I call the mad scrimmage, the media appreciation day, which tags along with student appreciation day. Sad. I think mad sounds a hell of a lot better than sad. But boy, you got to watch him throw more than like 10 passes and in anger to a certain extent, right? And the quick release is stunning. It's like Quick Draw McGraw. Maybe that'll be his new nickname. Just saying Quick Draw McGraw. But he loses his black stripe. So what we've been hearing from from spring practices is every day he looks better and better. And is there any chance? What do you think? Is there any chance that he can step up enough over the next several months, but even on Saturday, to prove that he belongs in the conundrum of who's going to be the Ohio State starting quarterback 2024?
I think he can definitely play his way into the conversation. And we look at Clemson back when Trevor Lawrence was there. He didn't start the first game of that season, but there came a point where they moved on from Kelly Bryant. They went to Trevor Lawrence. He ends up winning the national championship for a Clemson team that was loaded. But the quarterback position was the one where they were a bit hamstrung there. Kelly Bryant was a good player, not a great player. They were still trying to build post Deshaun Watson. And Trevor Lawrence got them over the hump. And he kind of clicked at the right time, the college football playoff, and was really good throughout that freshman season. So that's always, maybe that's the exception and not the rule, because Trevor Lawrence was one of the most highly decorated recruits all time. Julian Sayin was a pretty highly touted recruit himself. And I don't think that's something to basically, deny or reject that kind of idea. It could happen. Now he's going to have to continue to keep progressing at this rate, which kind of feels like he's just really expedited the normal timeline. Actually, Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Huddle, one of our friends of the program, posted today kind of a timeline of all the quarterbacks of when they lost their black stripe as true freshmen. And I was just looking at this, and it's pretty interesting. Okay, Julian Sayin, April 8th, right? We'll look at Lincoln Keenhold, September 28th. Devin Brown, October 6th. Kyle McCord, August 12th. CJ Stroud, October 21st. Dwayne Haskins, August 17th. So you keep going down the list. No one is near the spring. It's all summer, training camp, early part of their freshman season. The fact that he did it this quickly, especially, just transferring in from Alabama where he was an early enrollee and making such an impact. I mean, like you said, he's a gunslinger, and that's the words they used in their announcement video they posted today on social media for him receiving the black stripe removal. And, we saw it Student Appreciation Day. Like you said, quick release and not afraid with JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer coming at him to just stand in there and throw it. And he wasn't making all of the throws,
No.
but the important thing was that he wasn't afraid to try to test it deep, to throw where he could have been sacked if there was actual contact.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most impressive thing.
Sacked or racked. He definitely could have been racked on that play. But yeah, I just, these guys come along, man. And, as you well know, and I'm sure Chip Kelly and Ryan Day are probably thinking the same thing. Man, they want the best quarterback for this offense because this is a rarity. This is like an eclipse. It doesn't come around very often where all these pieces have come together. And I think we're going to talk about the offensive line in a second, what people should watch for on Saturday. These pieces have come together both offensively and defensively. You don't mess around with this. If in fact your gut tells you a young man deserves to play ahead of an older man, you do that, and it'll definitely be a gut check though, if in fact that happens. I think most people still believe Will Howard's going to win this job eventually, just based on he's had more starts than everybody else combined times 30, whatever it is. Devin Brown's the only one who's ever had a start in college football. So we'll leave it at that. But it is interesting that this has come to fruition and it is opening some eyes, and not just our eyes, but the coach's eyes of, hey, this guy has to have consideration. Now, with all that said, I remember when Jelani Thurman lost his black stripe in the spring last year at tight end. He looked the part, and the few times we got to watch, he caught balls. And just like the other day at Media Appreciation Day, he caught one of the first things you saw was him catching the ball right down the middle. I think that Lincoln Keenholz threw in traffic. But then we never really saw Jelani Thurman do much as a freshman. And a little bit he did was near the end of the year. So there's always going to come a wall for freshmen, no matter what position you're playing, to really grasp what needs to be done day after day on a major college football team. But like you said, you brought the Trevor Lawrence analogy. That's a good analogy, that if they're talented enough and you can get deeper into the season and maybe go, okay, let's pull the trigger on this guy, on the gunslinger. Let's pull the trigger on the gun. Stay in the same analogy. You see what I'm saying? That's not beyond the realm of possibility at all. Agreed?
Yeah, I mean, I totally think it's possible. Now, will it happen? We'll see. But even last year with the Devin Brown competition with Kyle McCord, Ryan Day would talk about it as if, look, we're trying to figure out who gives us the best chance to win a championship. And he committed to Kyle McCord, but it was always opened up to whoever gives us the best chance to win a championship throughout the season. And I felt like, the way they put that package in with Devin Brown around midseason, the Purdue mark,
Yep.
the way they were trying to feel him into the offense, if Devin Brown had stayed healthy and maybe had succeeded a lot with that package, I don't think it's crazy to say that maybe there would have been some kind of switch later in the season. I just think that Ryan Day needs to have that mentality. I don't know if he did totally. I feel like he did, but maybe he didn't. But even if he did or he didn't, he needs to have that because, like you said, this opportunity with the amount of talent they have on both sides of the ball and the coaching staff they have and all the chips that are in right now, you have to max opportunity. And if that means stepping on some toes, and if that means, making some people feel uncomfortable, you have to do that. He did that with his coaching staff this offseason. He's going to have to do it with his roster as well during the season.
Yeah, I mean, I even brought it up near the end of the season last year, and about the fact that they were trying to get Devin Brown in the action, because they only had two quarterbacks, really. I mean, Lincoln Keno's had to play in an emergency against Missouri in the Cotton Bowl after Kyle McCord left, and then Devin Brown got hurt, a quarter into his first start. But you could just see that Ryan Day was not happy with the production of that offense last year. And, no offense to Kyle McCord, but the quarterback is really the first place you look to maybe juice it up. Maybe a different guy in there will work better with what you have on hand there. Clearly, the offensive line on occasion last year was a work in progress. But the bottom line is they were trying to work Devin Brown into the action. I kept trying to tell people that, and then boom, he gets hurt against Penn State. I mean, against Penn State, he was in there against Penn State, which tells you what Ryan Day thought of him and the confidence he had in him to get the job done, right? I mean, that was their first real big game.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, Devin Brown,
Not real big game, but real big game. Go ahead now.
right, right. Well, yeah, the Notre Dame game at the time
Yeah,
felt
I
big.
meant after the Notre Dame game. Yeah,
Right,
I
right.
should have prefaced. I'm sorry. Go ahead now.
But yeah, Devin Brown has looked really good this spring too. We need to
Yeah.
mention, I mean, he's looked confident. I think he deserves a lot of credit for sticking around as long as he has. The way he talks about, his determination to prove himself and to come back from the injuries. I mean, he's just had the deck stacked up against him. Really, just all the odds are super mighty right now. But he is giving it his best shot, and I feel like he played the best of the three quarterbacks we've mentioned so far during Student Appreciation Day. And I think he's looked more consistent, which was his whole issue last year in the quarterback battle with Kyle McCord. It was pretty clear that he had more talent, probably a higher ceiling, but not as much consistency. And Ryan Day ultimately elected to go with Kyle McCord, who was more consistent of the two. It's still not extremely consistent, but Devin Brown is fighting for the spot too. And, maybe he's the guy that comes out, in that first game. And so that's going to be an important spring game for him. I mean, we haven't seen him in a spring game since his freshman year. So it's been a minute.
Yeah.
And I think that all of these guys are going to be intriguing to watch. I mean, Will Howard, seeing him in that stage, it's a different thing. I mean, Kansas State football, it's not small, but like we talked about earlier, this is a different deal. This is the step up. How is he going to perform in that kind of environment? So all three of these quarterbacks, and then Lincoln Keenholz has, made some improvements as well. And that brings up the question, is he going to stick around? I mean, we had the transfer portal window open up, as you mentioned, coming up on April 15th, and we'll talk about Dallan Hayden now after this, but what's going to happen on the quarterback position? Are there going to be departures there? And I think that's going to be really interesting to see as well.
It's going to be interesting because the bottom line is the black stripe removal tells you Julian Sayin is in the coach's thoughts big time. So what do you do with a freshman when you take his black stripe off? Now who knows who's going to jump in that portal? And everybody can say can guess Devin Brown or Lincoln Keno's. Who knows? I mean, if Will Howard doesn't hear what he wants to hear at the end of spring, he would have that option. As we've seen around the country, a lot of schools end up being more like bus stops than they do final destinations, or maybe commuter stops, or what do you call it? Commuter airline, where you have the hub and then you jump on another plane. So we'll see where that goes. But the bottom line is Julian Sayin has proven enough to the coaches that when they take the black stripe off, you're now an ordained Ohio State Buckeye. They are not averse of putting you in a football game that matters, right? That's what it's supposed to mean, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said earlier with that timeline, the fact that it's happening now and not sometime in fall camp or whatever, really noteworthy. I think it is a stark difference from what the normal timeline is. And Brian Day isn't just doing this willy-nilly. And, Chip Kelly's not just doing this for whatever. They understand, even Chip Kelly, who's just been here for a few months, they understand the tradition of this. Ryan Day wouldn't let that happen if he didn't really want it to happen, didn't want to send a message. And maybe he's sending a message to the other quarterbacks too.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a kind of like a little bit kick in the butt of like, hey, this guy's on your tail.
Yeah.
He's really turning some heads here. And so I think that's all purposeful. I don't think there's any randomness to that.
Let me tell you something though. Guaranteed they know. I mean, they're there watching, just like, we get to watch a little bit. They get to watch every damn play. I mean, they understand what this guy's all about. I'm talking about Julian Sayin. So this should come as no surprise to them. Real quick, in my opinion, this wasn't a surprise, but our friend Pete Nakos and company at On3 dropped the little line that they understand Dallan Hayden plans to move on to hit the transfer portal when it opens after spring. The running back for Ohio State, who had basically, how you lick a pencil and it's more indelible, but it's still, you can erase it, but it'll make a mess on your paper.
Mhm.
He was licked the end of the pencil, written down as the number 3 running back at Ohio State behind Travion Henderson and Quinshawn Judkins, who I think you and I both agree are 1A and 1B, or one. I was trying to think of something funny there and it didn't come out. So let's just move on 1A, 1B. But it wasn't really a surprise, was it? Even though we got to talk to him last week, that Dallan Hayden appears to be planning to hit the portal. Of course, those plans can change in a heartbeat, as we well know. But just what's your take on that? Obviously, you wrote some things for Lettermen Row about it, and on 3, and it was on a lot of the national the news pickups. So, but what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think when last week we talked to him and he did talk about his ties to Carlos Locklin, the new running backs coach, came over from Oregon. The fact that Carlos Locklin had coached in the Memphis, Tennessee area for 7 years, high school football. He had known Dallan Hayden and they had somewhat of a prior relationship. I thought that maybe that gave him a shot to stay and try to figure things out. But, less than a week after that, he has informed the staff reportedly, according to, as you said, Pete Nakos from On3, that he will be hitting the transfer portal. And I think that the biggest thing with this is, okay, where do you go from here for Ohio State? And also, I guess retrospectively, what went wrong with kind of managing Dallan Hayden and what could have been, considering this was a guy that came in freshman year, was on the back half of that depth chart, but ended up having to step up against Maryland. And I think I've always said saved the season. I mean, they had to come back and beat Maryland, classic trap game the week before Michigan, and they had to come back on the road. He had 143 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns in the second half alone, and really helped them get to the finish line there and escape an upset. And then this year, this
Wait a
past
minute, and
season,
then the next week,
yeah,
uh, he didn't even. I mean, he didn't play, or
they
what?
didn't
I
play
mean,
him at all against Michigan, and Chip Trayanum was the starter. And then they basically went with Chip Trayanum over Dallan Hayden last year, and instead decided to redshirt Dallan Hayden. And the only action he got was once again when he had to step up in similar role like he did against Maryland, where injuries sidelined both Travion Henderson and Maya Williams. And then, by the way, Chip Trayanum took a blow to the head and was out in the first quarter. And so here comes Dallan Hayden again, and he saves the day again and
against Purdue.
kind of jolts a defunct rushing attack that had just ran for 62 total yards against Maryland the week prior. He ran for 76 on his own on 11 carries against Purdue and got to the end zone while he was at it. I mean, and so just always raised the question of why aren't they using him more? What was the plan for him? He called it a mutual agreement for the red shirt to happen last year, but it was just head scratching. I feel like we were all confused of why, even in the Cotton Bowl, he was barely used, and that didn't make sense because his eligibility wasn't at stake in that situation. So there was just a lot of head scratching and eyebrow raising throughout this entire process. And so it's not a surprise, like you said, that he's transferring. I think it's more of a surprise of why Ohio State took this route with Dallan Hayden, who started in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah. Well, it kind of you kind of wonder if other things are going on, obviously. You know, I think maybe, who knows, right? Won't get into all that, but I mean, we just never got, what bothered you was we asked repeatedly last year and never got an explanation of red shirt with an exclamation point and a question mark at the end of it. Remember, red shirt? It didn't make sense is the main thing. And interestingly, the running backs coach is now at Michigan. So that is what it is, you know. But yeah, it's very, very, very curious. But I'm telling you what, man, I've got a couple of videos. You know, we were limited to 90 seconds of videos coming out of that media appreciation day that we could post. But James Peoples, just like Julian Sayin, James Peoples has the goods too, brother. Now they weren't tackling, and there's a big difference, but there's also a big difference in a guy running through a thud, you know, and maybe making something on his own too. I mean, James Peoples, he's got those, man, he looks like J.K. Dobbins a lot. Physically, he's a little bit larger, I do believe, but you know, we'll get into him in just a moment. I want to get to speaking of transfer portal and recruiting and everything you can see from the recruiting side of it paying off for Ohio State in that spring game coming up on Saturday. I wanted to get to my conversation with Steve Wiltfong, newly hired by On3.com, considered one of the true experts out there in the recruiting realm. He's now working with us. I think that's the best way of putting it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Part of the team.
So let's get to my conversation with Steve Wiltfong. As promised, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a long-time acquaintance, but you know, since he was with the opposition for the last 5 years or so, haven't had a chance to get him on the Tim May Show, previous iteration of the Tim May podcast. But Steve Wiltfong, man, what a parade announcing your decision to jump to On3.com, and you know, Lettermen Row is a prime part of On3.com. But welcome to the Tim May Show, finally.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's been a while since we last collaborated. You were not retired last time. We talked Ohio State recruiting. So one of the reasons why I came to On3 was so I could be on the Tim May Show. And I'm absolutely excited to be here and hope that we do this regularly.
Success, man. You're already a success. You've already achieved it. It's downhill from here. Hey, Steve, real quick, I wanted to get your take on this, man. You live over there in Zionsville, Indiana. You're right in the heart of the Big Ten country like everybody else. I mean, like a lot of the guys I talk to on this show and stuff. But I want people to understand how far you've come in this business. I mean, can you give people an idea of how you started, why you got into the recruiting aspect of things? What was the intrigue for you right on down the line there?
Well, I'll try and make the long story short, but my first job in the business was at the South Bend Tribune when I was 17 years old out of high school in August of 2000. I got a job at the South Bend Tribune answering the phone, and I wore my homecoming suit to the job interview for a job that paid $8.50 an hour. And so I got the gig, and I just answered a lot of phone calls, typed a lot of box scores. My first ever byline story was a high school volleyball match. I covered every high school sport there. Obviously, that graduated into football. And back then, newspapers were king still.
Oh, yeah.
In the South Bend Tribune, like on the weekends, the sports section would be over 20 pages. And there were a lot of really good sports writers around South Bend because of Notre Dame football at that time. And Rivals.com and stuff were starting to come on the scene. The internet was starting to take off. But the South Bend Tribune had a magazine called Irish Sports Report. And as soon as I got hired at the South Bend Tribune, there were two guys that worked at Irish Sports Report, Eric Hansen, who's in the Indiana Sports Writer Hall of Fame right now, and then Vaughn McClure, who a good friend of mine who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago. He was covering the Falcons for ESPN at the time, but he ended up being the Bears beat writer for the Chicago Tribune, covered the 49ers. So just some really major talents. David Hall was the columnist at the South Bend Tribune. He's now one of the main voices of Chicago sports for the Cubs and Bears and White Sox and Blackhawks up in Chicago now, does a lot of radio now. I would just always ask those guys if there was anything I could do. And they never had anything at first, of course, Tim. They weren't
Yeah.
like, oh, you just got here, why don't you do this? So you had to ask. I had to ask for months and months, hey, anything I could ever do for you guys, let me know. And finally, Vaughn McClure figured out, Irish Sports Report had these Olympic capsules on the very last page where they would summarize how Notre Dame's Olympic sports were doing. And Vaughn finally figured out that he didn't have to do those anymore. He's like, oh, give those to Steve.
Yeah.
And that turned into me maybe writing a feature story on a top Notre Dame Olympic sport athlete or whatever. And then that turned into, well, what kind of busy work can we give Steve on a Notre Dame football game day? So by 20 years old, now all of a sudden I'm in the press box on Saturdays. I'm at practice holding an extra tape recorder and then typing up quotes for the actual writers. And then that led to me getting bylines on like the third string wideout and how he's doing and how he's progressing. But it also allowed me to just kind of rub elbows with people on the beat and scout.com. Mike Frank had a Notre Dame website. We hit it off. He hired me to come be his Notre Dame football beat writer for $24,000. And so I'm in, I think I was 23 at the time. So I did 5 years at the Tribune, which was a tremendous experience, learning how to write and carry yourself as a professional and things of that nature.
And work hard. Yeah. Yeah.
So I get to Irish Eyes, it's called, and I'm just writing Notre Dame stories. And there's great Notre Dame writers on the beat. Michael Rothstein from Fort Wayne. He works for ESPN NFL. Brian Hamilton, I think he works for Sports Illustrated or something now. He was covering Notre Dame, and then David Hall, all those guys. And I'm writing the same articles as them, just not as well. But no one on the Irish Eyes website is there to read my football coverage. It's almost filler, I noticed. They were there for the recruiting. And that's when I really realized, like, this existed. And I was like, hey, they're talking more to this other reporter on this site. They're asking him a bunch of questions, but they're not asking me anything. So I was like, I need to get into this lane here and cover recruiting. So I asked Mike Frank, I said, hey man, I got some downtime. Can I cover a little recruiting? And at that time, Tim, like the guys that were covering recruiting, with all due respect, they weren't writers.
Yeah.
They were insiders, and it was still new. But like their update would be like 3 sentences. Jackson Smith-Njigba visiting Ohio State this weekend. Buckeyes probably lead, and there'd be grammatical, all kinds of errors, right?
Yeah, just in 3 sentences.
The diehards don't care. Like they just want to know the nuts and bolts of that. And that still holds true.
Sure.
But I was able to jump in, write articles that were kind of different in the space. And then it just kind of took off, and I covered Notre Dame recruiting for a while. Mike Frank took his business to an ESPN affiliate. And then at ESPN allowed me to write some features on some non-Notre Dame athletes for their recruiting page at the time. And then Shannon Terry started 24/7 Sports. It was the year I met my wife. I was 26 years old. I told my wife I was going to be leaving that Notre Dame affiliate, my girlfriend at the time, to go to this startup 24/7 Sports, because they hired me to be the Midwest analyst. She was like, she just saw ESPN affiliate, and I was like, are you sure? And I'm like, well, I'm barely under that umbrella. Like, let's. And so I get the job at 24/7 Sports before we're even a website. We're not even launched. So did some behind the scenes stuff there to help that database get off the ground. And Midwest recruiting turned into Big Ten recruiting, which turned into national recruiting, which turned into director of recruiting, which I was at 24/7 Sports for 10 years. I was there for almost 14 years. And then I'm now here at On3. So that's my journey in a nutshell. And recruiting has certainly changed a ton. But it's, I'm, again, damn happy to be here. And, as I talk to you, Tim, I keep looking at my phone because that's just the nature of the beast here. And so,
well, let me know if there's any breaking Ohio State recruiting news on that.
No, not yet. Yeah.
Hey, I'll let you keep up with it, man. You and I go, well, we go way back. Then we had that little, what I call it, interlude there where I wasn't talking to you, but I've always enjoyed my interaction with you because dude, when I first started covering Ohio State football, we did all that legwork, just by yourself. You would amass these lists of players Ohio State might be looking at and be calling them 24/7 and stuff. And one of the, I used to take Tom Lemming's top 100 every year. He would dictate it to me on the phone, and
Well, Tom,
yeah,
he's
and
a
then Bill
pioneer,
Curley.
man.
Yeah, and Bill Kurlick. I mean, whether you're rivals or not. I mean, pardon that pun, but Bill Kurlick, right here based in the Columbus, Ohio area, he jumped into that fray, especially with Ohio State football, and then some other guys came along, including you, who were just. I'll be honest with you, it kind of took the burden off of calling these guys every day or every week. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, from a sports writer standpoint, and now, I mean, the industry. Yeah, I mean, On3 is definitely, Shannon Terry. You get linked back up with Shannon Terry after a little ways away, but people want to know about this stuff, right? Or does it ever amaze you how much people want to know, or the people who want to know about recruiting, how much they do want to know about recruiting? I'm not sure every college football fan wants to know it, but the ones who do are ardent about it, right?
Well, each passing year it becomes more and more mainstream. And I mean, there's pioneers like Tom Lemming is a pioneer. I'm not sitting here if Tom Lemming doesn't exist, and Alan Wallace and people like
Alan
that,
Wallace. Yeah.
that, started with their magazines and started building a foundational interest in recruiting and rankings and what your recruiting class ranking is, so salute to those guys. But Shannon Terry, I mean, he invents Rivals. He invents 24/7 Sports. Those businesses are still standing. There's a lot of people working there that are supporting their families. He's created this whole space.
Yeah.
And now we're at On3. And so with that, he's created 3 companies in the space that are now competing with each other, that are bringing information that becomes more and more mainstream because of these companies that he's created. And then social media has allowed it to become easier for fans to access quick information on recruiting. It's easier for them to find the rankings and where their recruiting class might rank. And so just the interest is off the charts, and it's more and more each year. And so these recruits are becoming more and more household names before they get to a college campus because of the coverage from places like On3, 24/7, and Rivals. And I'm very fortunate of that because that's the lane I ride in and where I exist.
Yeah. And not only that, but I mean, like you're talking about, I mean, for want of another term, the publicity that's afforded these prospects by fellows like you and others who are talented in your field, it helps grow their NIL, their NIL worth before they ever get to college. I mean, we're in a great. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you a question. I accidentally cut you off. Jeremiah Smith, if he signs with Ohio State 5 years ago under the same terms, number 1 player in the country, number 1 wideout, how many people are in the shoe each game for a Saturday?
Yeah, 105,000, let's say.
So 105,000. I would have said 5 years ago, Jeremiah Smith, before he makes a play inside the shoe, 20,000 fans know who he is, which means 85,000 don't. How many fans of Ohio State know Jeremiah Smith now before he makes a play in the shoe?
Yeah.
Just the average fan.
How many, well, let me pose this. How many fans of not Ohio State know who Jeremiah Smith is? I mean, but it's crazy. I mean, do you have a number there, or are you just throwing that out there rhetorically?
Well, I'm just kind of I'm just saying, like, recruiting has become more and more mainstream.
Oh yeah.
Where 5 years ago or 10 years ago, the average fan that just tailgates and goes to the game on Saturday that may still know who the starters are, they don't know who you are until you make a play.
Yeah.
Where the diehards, they know who the backup offensive linemen are.
Yeah.
So that hasn't changed. But now it's more mainstream. The more mainstream fan is aware of these incoming freshmen and who they are and their stature. And I think it's because of the industry that Shannon created and we've been able to ride on.
Can I ask you a bold question here too, though? But has the publicity these guys have all gained through, heck, starting sometimes when they're freshmen in high school, or maybe before that, but definitely freshmen in high school. Some of these guys are getting offered going into their sophomore year and stuff, and things like that. But has it created maybe a realm of expectations that's a little bit over the top too? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I think that spotlight that's been put on some of these guys, it kind of shows us who they are earlier, right? So it shows college coaches who they are earlier too, and the good ones then can decipher, do we want this young man in our program and in our culture, or do we not? Because these kids are tipping their hands earlier on their personality and what motivates them.
Yeah.
Like Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is a wealthy young man, and rightfully so, but he's going to give Ohio State the same amount of effort, whether he's in the NIL era or not. He's just built as a football player that just happens to be getting fruit from it earlier in this landscape. But he doesn't change at all because he is worth more in college than he would have been 5 years ago. But there are some kids out there that aren't built for that. And, you know, I think college coaches are able to get a small taste of that. Now, even with that being said, sometimes it's still hard to look away from the talent. And you might know, hey, this isn't going to end well, but we hope it doesn't, you know, so we'll still take a chance. But oftentimes, you know, they can tell now.
Yeah. Well, let's just, whatever. I want to come back and ask you a little bit more about what you do and stuff, but Ohio State football, I keep telling people, you know, like last year was a disappointment, you know, because of the way the season ended, et cetera. And the previous 2 years to a certain extent. But I keep telling people this is the golden era of Ohio State football. I mean, if you just look over the last 20 years, really, you know, back to the start of the Jim Tressel era till now, I mean, it's never been better. And it's definitely never been better on a consistent basis in recruiting than it is now. What's your assessment of that? I mean, because you've been watching it, you know, you grew up watching Notre Dame football and working at South Bend Tribune, you know what I mean, right on down the line. But so you have an appreciation for Ohio State, one form or fashion. But do you agree that this is the golden era to a certain extent?
Sure. And I growing up in South Bend, obviously you like Notre Dame, and they had some damn good teams when I was a kid, Tim. And that the 93 team still should have won the national title. But I saw Eddie George come into South Bend and Ohio State and them run over Notre Dame, and Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame were on TV a lot. And I'm just a sports fan, so I'm one of the rares that liked all three programs, and I like Penn State, and just, you know, it would be cool to get a West Coast game. But Ohio State, when have they not been in the conversation? And I mean, I'm 41, almost 42, and I can't think of a time where outside of one season where you're transitioning coaches between Tressel and Urban, I can't think of a time where they weren't at least in the conversation. Now, so this is a program that is creme de la creme, invested in winning. And then you look at Ohio State the last 2 years, they lose to Georgia in the playoff game. They lose to Michigan, who makes the playoff, and then Ohio State also makes the playoff, and they lose to Georgia in heartbreaking fashion in a game where they were kind of kicking their ass. You know, and Marvin Harrison gets hurt, and that last drive was weird. Long field goal, tough miss. But like Ohio State was as good as anybody 2 years ago. And then this past year, they lose a heartbreaker on the road to the team that wins the national championship. So for me, I'm reading the Ohio State message boards, and it just blows me away how far away some of the fans are like acting like Ohio State was on those message boards. And I'm like, well, it's hard to win every game, man. And I know some of these pivotal games at the end of the year did not go your way. And I understand that the coaches understand when they take the job at Ohio State, this scrutiny comes with it. But like, you are there. You do not have to blow anything up. Now, does that not mean you don't need to make an adjustment here and an adjustment there? Because obviously you still need to gain an inch. When you start playing golf, it's easy to go from 110 to 100 to 90 to 80. Yeah. But then it starts getting hard to shave strokes. So Ohio State, they're just trying to shave a stroke.
Yeah.
A stroke and a half, maybe. So sometimes that's hard. But you're there. Like, you're in the realm. So, like, it was just blew me away how, like, people acted how far away this program is our offensive line is not where it needs to be, or it's like, well, your running back room is never healthy. whoever got on the field at running back, I thought was prepared. Like you just lost a tough game on the road to Michigan, man. It is what it is. But this team coming back this year, you're right back in it. When you start talking about the teams that have a chance to win the national championship, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, those are three that come to mind right away for me. You got some others that are, certainly in the conversation, but those are the three right away for me is like, well, and those are the ones that I'm looking at the most. And it's a great time, man. And Ryan Day and his staff, they have Ohio State there. They crushed the portal. They're bringing in another great recruiting class. And the best thing about Ohio State football, honestly, is that the players love playing at Ohio State. And so they pour into this program. And even though, they're getting NIL opportunities and all of that. But to my original point on Caleb Downs, and it's never 100% anywhere, but most these kids are here for the right reason. They want to represent Ohio State. They want to be developed by Ohio State coaches, and they want to win while they're here. Now, certainly they all have their individual goals too, but it's all within the culture and the realm. And so this program's great. It would be scary for something like that to change at the top, and then you don't know what the culture is going to. It's not easy to have a culture like this. And so it's an exciting time around spring ball. I know the coaches are excited. This football team's got a chance to win the national championship, and we'll see what health is like next fall and how the chips go. But this is what a time, man.
As you stand there from your vantage point, your perspective, I said this during the John Cooper era. Wrote a column early in John Cooper era way back when they were having trouble getting going. Once they got going, like you said, in the 90s, man, from 92 really on, it was a different program except for one blip. If everybody started rowing the boat in the same direction, as I said it in Ohio State, backing it, what a sight it would be to behold. And it happened, and it's still going on. But the NIL thing, has Ohio State gotten this act together as well, if not better than anybody? Because it wasn't that way a couple, 3 years ago when it first started. But explain to people, when you look at it from your vantage point, how impressive that aspect of it is. And does it show, once again, for want of another term, the strength of Buckeye Nation when it all gets behind the same thing?
Well, this is just my opinion, so I may be off, but this is like my perception of how I view it. But like seeing Mark Fletcher flip and things like that, and then losing some tight games at the end where you're an inch away, you're a golf stroke away. Everybody's like, this is this show rated PG-13? Like, can I say, like, this is not happening anymore. Like, whatever we got to do to get to 67, or 66, 14 wins. So Edric Houston coming down the pipe, decision day, Alabama in the morning, back to Ohio State. Boom. Like Jeremiah Smith, that was a war. He's a Buckeye,
You saw Ryan Day's, I keep using the word visceral. You saw his visceral reaction when he was given a thumbs up from the back of the room on signing day that Jeremiah Smith had in fact recommitted and signed. Although the letter didn't come in for a little while, which was a little bit of angst, but you could see it, right? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Look, Ohio State, like everybody, has to determine what it looks like from a collective standpoint for each player on the roster for what we have, right?
Yeah.
But they are able to go to battle.
Yeah.
And I think whenever I see Ohio State in the mix for an elite player now, and I have and that decision is also going to factor in what the NIL opportunity is, as well as player development stuff. Ohio State is good there too, in my opinion. And so they're still not going to win every recruiting battle, but I just don't think that we're in a space where they're going to lose one on that front because of that anymore.
Yeah.
And So that's an exciting time. Now that still doesn't mean that you have a bottomless pit. I know people think that like all these programs have bottomless pits. That's not true, man. I mean, like, so you still have to be calculated, but I think that it's an exciting time for Ohio State on all fronts. And I think when you look in the Big Ten, I think they are one of the programs that is armed on every front.
Hey, how are you as a recruiting, for want of another term, recruiting guru, recruiting expert? How do you assess things when you look at when a guy has interest in several different schools, but then they ultimately pick a school? How much are you always trying to figure out how much of it is just the appeal of the school, or how much of it is the appeal of the NIL deal that could be coming down the pike? I mean, there's a lot of things that you didn't necessarily have to keep in mind, right? 5 years ago in this regard. I mean, there may have been stuff going on, but it wasn't like it is now, but how tough is that to kind of judge whether this guy's heart is in it or whether his pocketbook's in it?
Well, I think most kids still want to go to a place where they have a chance to get developed to play in the NFL first and foremost. Then second, they want to win and play in the biggest games. Third, they want to, be surrounded by like-minded individuals and be in an environment that they're comfortable in, and that includes the coaching staff. With that being said, there are still some kids where it's, and I think it's fewer than people would think, but where it's just what's the bottom line. There are a couple of those each cycle. Then it's up to the coaching staff to determine is that ideology or mentality still going to work with us?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so sometimes they'll say, yes, he's so talented, we just want to get him here, and then he's going to perform because he has his own ambition anyway.
Yeah.
But sometimes it might be like, this dude, he only cares about it. He doesn't even love football that much, so we ain't going to be the highest bidder,
Yeah.
So that's an element out there. But I still think at the end of the day, player development is first and foremost, because these kids want to hear their names called as early as possible in the NFL draft. So the programs that have that track record are still going to have the inside track for the top recruiting classes in the country year in and year out, because holistically, that's what those kids want. And then a chance to play in the biggest games, which those typically go hand in hand. So people are like, why are your rankings mirrors of the NFL draft and not what they're going to do in college? Well, typically it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
The players that get drafted oftentimes are the best players in college. So, that's why the On3 rankings and then the 24/7 ones, we're just trying to predict the draft here, man. And we rank your guy as a first rounder. And if he's a first rounder in college, he probably did some good stuff for you.
But primarily concerns how good of a college football player is this guy going to be, right? I mean, to begin with and stuff. And I just wanted to ask you real quick before we get out of here. The transfer portal is that a headache for guys like you, or is the transfer portal exactly what everybody thought? Everybody thought they wanted, 8-10 years ago, along with NIL and guys being remunerated for their playing abilities at these major colleges, which are raking in millions, and the conference is billions. But has the transfer portal added a headache for you guys, or has it just added more headlines that you can throw out there every day? I'm talking about you guys that cover recruiting, and the transfer portal is about recruiting also.
No question. It's added another avenue or lane for us to have talking points and articles. So it's great for you and I, Tim, that the transfer portal exists. Now, I think that the funny thing is, and I've been on message boards for years, the readers think that we like drama, and we don't. We like the answer.
Yeah, exactly. Black and white.
So when a young man is flipping back and forth at the end, we're not out here trying to paint this picture of like, is it going to be Ohio State? Is it going to be Georgia? Back and forth to keep you on the edge of your seat. No, that's really happening. Like the Edric Houston thing really happened on the last day. Like I wish I could have just woke up and stamped it and moved on.
Yeah.
And because there's enough going on. There's already enough interest. But the transfer portal has added another layer of like excitement around the sport. Fans are interested in it, so we love covering it and bringing the latest news on what we're hearing from the portal, or where a team may need to bolster a position room, or hey, where you may unfortunately lose a guy. This guy may be going in the portal on you. And then look, there's guys that behind the scenes want to go in the portal, and the coaching staffs find that out and they get that ironed out before they even go in the portal.
Sure.
So that's also happening now too. A guy that Ohio State had to kind of keep from going in the portal a couple times was Big DeJuan Jones from Indianapolis. Like each year he was going in, and then they would have to bring him in. They'd have to talk to him, map out his future again, and start all over, and then they'd get him to stay, And so, like, and now he's a draft pick. He's starting games in the NFL this year, but it ain't easy, sometimes.
Yeah.
And every program has to do that, know.
And well, everybody's recruiting now, and then they're re-recruiting when you're in school. I mean, it's like it's 24/7 recruiting. That's why when people, if they poo-poo like, oh, well, how important is recruiting coverage for a program? It's what it always was. That you win with people is what Woody Hayes said, but now it's 24/7 for the coaches of getting people, keeping who they got, and maybe looking at somebody in the transfer portal, right? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, the word that you don't hear anymore, Tim, in our career that we used to always hear, you've said the word recruiting a ton, is we don't say the word de-recruiting anymore.
Yeah.
Like recruit a guy to get to campus, and then the first day they show up, all of a sudden you're like, who the hell is this coach? I wasn't talking to this guy for 8 months. This guy's riding my ass. This guy's living in my kitchen now, just getting on me every day. He was telling me how much he loved me for a year and a half, and now he's telling me how much I suck right now. You don't know more de-recruiting anymore, because, I mean, and the other thing, I'll leave you with this, Tim. It's like, I was talking to a head coach yesterday, and he was telling me that he thought that they were going to lose one of their third string D linemen because he's third string. And he's like, well, we have to get that guy from someone else's program, so we have depth in the room. So who is our Tim May that is not happy that he's third string for us? He's going to go into the portal. So we need to find the Steve Wiltfong who is upset that he's third string somewhere else. Come in. So they're just trading bodies at this. That's going to be happening in the portal too, for depth. And then obviously, hopefully those guys still could potentially turn into good players. But it's just kind of funny, the new conversations that are happening behind the scenes. It's like, man, we're losing our third string D lineman. He's mad. He's third string. We need to find so-and-so's mad third stringer too now, because he's looking for greener pastures.
Hey, last question for you is in your business. I mean, obviously you and I got to know each other pretty well way back when, because I think everybody understands that, you're interested in who's going where, but where do you find people the most avid of the fans out there of the recruiting aspect? Is it the blue bloods? Is it, Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama, Texas A&M, I know, has got a great, I grew up in East Texas, great fan base, et cetera. Do those still kind of drive the gravy train? So, for want of another term, for recruiting sites?
So for me, I mean, I think the you're talking about who's got the best fans, basically.
Yeah, as in the interest in what's going on.
The interest. So like, the interest is still Midwest and Southeast. And South. The people out West, they just got better stuff to do, I guess, where, I mean, like, it's just not as, now that doesn't mean to say that, I mean, USC's got great fans, Oregon's got great fans and stuff like that. But I guess my point is like, it just seems like the fandom, there's less, we don't have beaches, there's less surfing, whatever, what have you. That's not always 81 degrees and sunny. I don't know, it's just football and the SEC. And I mean, these stadiums, there's a reason why these stadiums hold over 100,000 people in the Midwest and Southeast, and they didn't build those suckers out west.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, so it's kind of funny, like the Big Ten maybe hasn't had as much success on the field year in and year out as the SEC programs, but the interest isn't less. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at the game day attendances at these places, Wisconsin, Iowa. I mean, they're selling Nebraska. Those are sellouts every Saturday, 90,000 people, you know,
Yeah.
and then Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, they go over 100 every Saturday.
Yeah.
You know, it's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Have you noticed though, have the teams that are joining the Big Ten, you know, coming in from the West now, is their recruiting at all been enhanced by being part of the Big Ten already? I mean, what have you noticed?
Those programs were always capable of having great classes anyway. So the true question is, does it enhance UCLA? I haven't noticed one way or the other. If they've I don't think they've gotten a bump yet. I haven't noticed any kind of big bump with that. Or Washington, you know, they're capable of being anywhere between 15 and lower. You know, do they get a bump? I don't know. But recruiting's just the preface to the actual story. It's like a preview to, this is what you might read, but you still got to get them in your program, get them on your nutrition plan, get them in your strength plan, get them in your offense, scheme them up correctly. There's so many things that happen after recruiting that's why the you know, it's like people are like, hey, can Michigan start recruiting better after they won a national championship? I'm like, look, I love that you love the rankings, but they just won the national championship. Like, they're about to have an epic NFL draft. We didn't get that right. Like, somewhere in there, they had the #1 class in the country, and we didn't rank it that way. It's like, is Michigan going to start doing better? No, they got their guys in. Their strength and conditioning was off the charts, and then they schemed those guys into making plays. And I was talking to a head coach about this the other day, the amount of NFL players that are within their program compared to other programs, and I was like, well, I think a lot of that is player development, and so you give credit to these programs of getting these guys and maximizing them compared to other places. And Michigan under Jim Harbaugh did a fantastic job of taking 18-year-olds and turning them into tough, hard-nosed players by the time they were 22, 23. Ohio State certainly does that. They're great in the NFL draft every year. Penn State under James Franklin, they've had as good a draft run as they've had since Paterno back in the 90s, I think it was, his 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
So they're on the uptick. The NFL draft is the ultimate tell for how talented your football team is. Now, that doesn't guarantee you a national championship, but probably says you're in the conversation. And but you still got to get them better. And Ohio State, what an exciting time, Tim. This is a football team that's got a chance to win it all. They just got to go out and execute. And do you like this 12-team playoff?
No, I don't. I mean, I think this is the people don't understand what a pressure this is going to put on college football rosters. You know, I mean, you look at Ohio State; it's stacked, but I mean, you could see 3 injuries and boom, things can get really touchy. You know what I mean? And round up. Yeah, right. I think we're in uncharted territory. Now only 2 teams will play at least 3 extra games. You know what I mean? Maybe 4, depending on how they fall in the rankings. So, hey, I want to ask you one quick.
If your starting quarterback goes down in the semifinal, though,
yeah.
And again, I don't like it. I'm still a blockbuster Copper Bowl type guy, and who we think the 2 best teams are, and let them play. And
I'm with you.
But look, doesn't mean I still won't be captivated by it. I'll still be watching closely, and I'll be in all the games too. But I don't know, man. Maybe I'm a get off my lawn guy, but I just think it's too much. And
Gran Torino.
And I know people look, and rules, something like the transfer portal. If players want to transfer every year, there shouldn't be government that says that you shouldn't do that. But sometimes rules are also put in place to help you out. Because it's hard to graduate from college if you play 4 places in 4 years. Now, maybe that's not your end goal. Maybe that's not what you want. And again, there shouldn't be government for that. So it is. Yeah, it is. It's just a. But
sometimes you have to have the Wild West to settle the West. You know what I mean?
Right. we don't need 12. We don't need 12 teams when we know that here's the clear cut 4.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, let me ask you one other quick thing. Is there one guy in this freshman class for Ohio State? And I'm gonna whatever, put forth this name that you think could wow people by the middle of the season other than Jeremiah Smith. And the name, I'm telling you, the more he practices, the better he looks from everybody who you get inside from. And we've gotten to watch a little bit too, is Julian Sayin, this freshman quarterback from Carlsbad via Alabama. He made his connecting flights in Tuscaloosa to end up at Ohio State. But I mean, you saw him in recruiting and stuff. You're not surprised by hearing good things about him, are you?
Well, he was the best pure thrower of the football in the class. I mean, he's a dot maker. I've seen him throw several times over the course of his high school career, and his accuracy, it was better than anyone's in the class. And he's also very competitive. I mean, he was the Elite 11 winner out there. It was just different watching him, just consistent. And quarterback play is between the ears. Can we get in the right protection? Do we know where to go with the football? Are we in the right routes? Am I handing the ball off? Am I throwing here against what I'm seeing? I think he's an uber smart guy, got Ivy League family members. So I think he'll be able to do all that. And then when it's time to actually drop back and then decide where he's got to go with the football, he's going to put it in a timely fashion where it's supposed to go. That's what he does best. He is an active thrower. He's smart. And so you put all this around him, he's got a chance to guide you where you want to go. So it was an exciting flip to get him. And it's kind of wild because Ohio State, I think before the bowl game, they were content with their room.
Yes.
Like, all right, Devin, he's going to be our starter for years to come. We like Lincoln.
You got Air Noland.
And then we got Air Nolan, and this we're going to ride. This is good. This is good enough room.
And we're going to get one guy from the portal, Will Howard. Yeah.
But I don't think they were going to go in the portal. You might know better than me. Then the Missouri game happens. Devin gets hurt. My guess is Lincoln didn't get very many snaps because Devin got the snaps. When we left out the Kyle part, Kyle was
Kyle McCord transfers.
And I think so when you have all that, and I think
that's when they went to the portal, by the way. And because we were everybody was ready to write that Will Howard was coming to Ohio State. I remember obviously the day before the Cotton Bowl. Go ahead.
They never recruited. They never recruited Cam Ward, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
But
back
the Kyle McCord thing was, I think that threw everyone off because, look, they just lost to Michigan. No promises being made moving forward. Well, all right. Well, I'm out. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you just threw for 3,000 yards and completed 65% of your passes. I mean, it's going to be hard to unseat you.
Yeah. Just get out there and compete.
It would be my opinion, and it's a good pickup for Syracuse, and he's a good player. But whatever. Then they think Devin's going to be the guy. He gets hurt, so he didn't get a chance to write the story the way he wanted to last year. But he's in there competing right now, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Lincoln, I just think he's coming from small school ball, Idaho. But I think he showed flashes in the All-America Bowl. But God knows how many snaps he got in the build-up for that game. And that was, Missouri was ready to play that game.
Yeah.
That was a big game for Missouri.
Yeah.
And Ohio State played hard.
Yeah.
They played. And that's a testament to the Ohio State program. They had some opt-outs, but the guys on the field, they played their asses off. They just didn't win.
Yeah.
And so
but anyway, let me correct. Obviously, because all these states mesh together, he's from small school, South Dakota. Lincoln is, but Pierre, South Dakota, so whatever. But no, you're exactly right. It's the off season. You got into this. One last thing here. I've never seen an off season like Ohio State had in the month of January and February, including Bill O'Brien coming and going, and then getting standing head coach Chip Kelly as their offensive coordinator, who once tutored Ryan Day as a youngster way back when and stuff. It has been a crazy 3 months. I think you agree, right?
Yeah, but most days were good days for the Buckeyes, man.
Yeah, exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Wiltfong, who clearly is getting yet another message on his wide-ranging, hopefully he has the expanded text messaging plan on his cell phone. Steve, thanks for joining. We'll have you on again too, man, whenever you get some time. But I appreciate it, man. The Zionsville's best. Steve Wiltfong, ladies and gentlemen.
An absolute pleasure. Next time we'll just dive into Ohio State recruiting. So
You,
take care, y'all. Happy to be here. See you on the Lettermen Row.
well, I appreciate it, Steve, getting with me. Tried to get him on as soon as possible since his hiring. I think this is a major league pickup for on3.com, but they seem to be making major league pickups every day of the week. Heck, they picked you up, didn't they, Anders?
They did, but the Steve pickup is like a Caleb Downs transfer portal edition. It's that kind of big power move, a head
I
turner
got
for
you.
sure.
I got you. I see where you're coming from there, but don't put yourself down. You're a big time power move. Pick up yourself. Speaking of pickups, man, these running backs, it's very interesting. It does look like, you don't just leave. I mean, you don't just leave suddenly. We got to talk to Dallan Hayden last week, and I wouldn't say we got anything definitive from him. No, I'm staying, right? I mean, it was always an interesting conversation with the young man because he doesn't say a whole lot. Uh, and but it does kind of put the onus, if in fact it happens, it puts the onus on, for example, James Peoples to step up, right? And maybe Sam Williams-Dixon, who's been, well, I understand, banged up, during the winter and maybe possibly through the spring, but especially James Peoples. Hey, it's a moment to show what you're all about. And Saturday in the spring game, the final spring scrimmage would be a good place for him to start, right?
Yeah, Tim, as you always say, the people's choice, right? James
Yes.
Peoples. Yeah, out of Texas, Veterans Memorial. So yeah, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for him. He's a downhill runner, which is similar to what Dallan Hayden brings to the table. And when you look at James Peoples, I remember we were at the Cotton Bowl, and one of the first people I saw coming out for Ohio State, Spencer and I kind of joked about this. We thought he was a player, an active player from behind, just seeing his calves and the way he was walking and his size. He's 203 pounds,
Oh
and
yeah.
but it turns out to be James Peoples throwing the football around with Peyton Pierce, a new linebacker for Ohio State, also part of this most recent recruiting class. And just kind of goes to show how, kind of football ready he is for the college game in terms of his frame. Now, of course, there's the mental side of things, working now with a new running backs coach, a second new running backs coach in as many, 3 or 4 months, a new offense and all that stuff. But he physically is right there. And I think that is intriguing for Ohio State fans. And they're going to need that depth because it's going to be potentially a longer season with the 12-team college football playoff. And just given the injury history with this running back position the last few years at Ohio State, he'll probably need to be called into action, even just for depth purposes early in the season. And Sam Williams-Dixon, I thought it was cool to see him out of the backfield catching passes. I feel like he flashed that. Pickerington North guy. 3-star recruit, not as highly touted as James Peoples, but extremely athletic. It was fun watching him out there at
Oh
the
yeah.
June recruiting camps last year here at Ohio State. So both those guys can be involved in the mix. And then the other guy that I think was surprising for all of us to hear was TC Caffey, who was mentioned by Ryan Day unprompted, just brought him up to say, hey, I think that's another guy that can contribute for us. He's going to get carries for us. He's going to bring value. Now I'm wondering with Dallan Hayden potentially planning to enter the transfer portal here, will TC Caffey be elevated to scholarship? Will they look to the transfer portal for another running back? Or yeah, like I said, will they just stick with TC Caffey because they seem to be pretty impressed with him?
Yeah. Do you think, what's your take on, do you think they need to get somebody out of the portal uh, just from a depth standpoint? Because there's a good chance that Travion and Quinshon, it'll be the Travion Quinshon show for just this fall. I mean, Quinshon's going into his 3rd year. Obviously, Travion's going into his 4th year. I don't think we expect either one of them to be back. Of course, I said the same thing a couple of years, a year ago or a year and a half ago about the running back situation. Some guys did come back, but do you think it behooves them just from a depth standpoint to get somebody from the portal?
Yeah, I'm not sure they need to. It seems like they're pretty happy with TC Caffey, and I know people will be like, "Well, that's a walk-on," but he scored a touchdown in an Ohio State uniform already. He had a
Right.
49-yard touchdown beginning of the 2022 season against Toledo. He tore his ACL not long after that, and that took him a while to kind of get off the back burner and kind of insert himself back into this conversation. But look, Chip Trayanum last year was a guy that they factored in to the run game pretty heavily. And the year before, they started teasing him into that role after he came here to be a linebacker from Arizona State, where he was a running back previously. And they had an option to add another running back late in the recruiting cycle or pull someone else into the transfer portal. And they said, no, we like Chip Trayanum. We're happy with Chip Trayanum. He's going to be part of this. He's going to round out that running back group. And he ended up having a big role. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just stick with TC Caffey. I think they know what they have in their backyard. They see him every day. They seem to be really impressed by him. Again, I think what Ryan Day says unprompted is always super noteworthy. And I think that says a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't take anyone on the transfer portal. And I don't think that should sound off any alarms because I think they know what they have.
Hey, real quick, I will hit a couple more points and I'll let you go. I always appreciate you sitting in that co-pilot seat, but I know you got to make connections at LaGuardia. Have they figured out the offensive line, do you think? Meaning, do you think what we've been seeing and hearing about with Luke Montgomery at right guard and Josh Fryer at right tackle, staying at right tackle where he started last year, and then of course there's the battle at center with Seth McLaughlin, the transfer from Alabama, 2-year starter at Alabama, and Carson Hinsman, who was pressed into duty last year when Luke Whippler left, in my opinion, too early, but he made a team, so it is what it is. But Carson Hinsman, back in battling big time after missing the Cotton Bowl for who knows what, which was never clear. Do you think the offensive line? Do you like what you've heard about this offensive line? Do you think that's our offensive line as we're sizing it up? Do you think that's what's going to be the starting group, or the starting group's going to come from those 6 guys?
Yeah, I think I feel a lot
I didn't
more
mention to the
confident.
left side because everybody knows who the left side is, but go ahead.
Right.
Josh Simmons and Donovan Jackson, mainstay from Texas.
Right. Yeah, I think that the offensive line I feel a lot more confident about now than I did this time last year. That being said, I still need to see more. And again, in spring practice, you just don't see a ton. In the practices we got to see, a couple of them were earlier on in the process where you can't tell anything from the offensive line. We saw a little bit more at Student Appreciation Day. I still feel like the defensive line got the better of the offensive line a lot of that day, not as much as the year before where it was complete domination. But I still think I need to see a little bit more from this offensive line to feel like I can say they'll be absolutely fine. And the other thing that we always talk about, Tim, is that they've just gotten really lucky on the offensive line the last several years of not having a season-ending injury. So they need more than 6 guys really to be ready, called in action. So Tegra Shabola needs to be ready. He's in the conversation at right tackle with Josh Fryer, who's had a great offseason apparently. Then you've got other guys like George Fitzpatrick that are also in the tackle conversation. So these guys are all important because if one goes down, you need someone to step up, and that can't derail your season. Just as we talked about the quarterback position being so important. Well, it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback if they're not being protected. And that's going to be super critical to have all the linemen ready to go in that second fleet, because I think one of the most alarming things last year was not only was the first team offensive line not playing well, but when Ryan Day was asked about potentially the second teamers passing up the first teamers early on in that season, around week 3, week 4, he said, well, there's not really anyone on the second team that's really pushing for snaps right now.
Right.
That was one of the most alarming things I think he said all season. And if you're having that this season as well, that would be alarming again. Like, you need to have that second unit ready to go and push it. And it seems like it's better this time around. Justin Fry's guys are in their second and third years, so that you're having a little bit more development. But yeah, I feel better, but not great about the offensive line.
Who do you think, last thing, who do you think the people walk into the gate and haven't gotten to go to a scrimmage or see a little bit of practice like we have this spring? Who do you think they will be talking about walking back through the gates, whether they leave at halftime, if in fact there is a halftime, whether they leave it, well, I guess it has to be because Fox is going to be there. But I don't know why I digressed, man. Who do you think they're going to be talking about upon exiting Ohio Stadium on Saturday, the people who go there and watch it live? Just give me a couple of names.
Yeah, I'm not going to say Jeremiah Smith because everyone already knows him. I'm going to say Bryson Rogers because he was electric during Student Appreciation Day. They're so happy he came back. He's happy he came back. He was in the transfer portal for a minute this offseason, decided that was not the right choice. He was back. I think that the way the spring game goes, I could see him being a big performer and just showing out a little bit. And maybe he will play a small role this season as a wide receiver, getting some actual snaps, meaningful snaps this season. I think he's great in the slot. He's extremely fast. I think he would catch people's attention. I would also say that maybe on the defensive side of the ball, Edric Houston, someone that I think is hard to miss. Seeing him practice, maybe like in the back half of the game, he gets a little bit more run. He's just a big guy. Where's number 96? You can't really miss him. Maybe he'll make a few plays here and there. Jalen McClain, I know they really like. He's a freshman,
Yep.
coming in at that safety position, and wouldn't surprise me if he makes a play or two. So those are some guys that off the top of my head. Who are you looking for though? Who do you think will surprise? We know the main cast of characters, but is there
Yeah.
anyone that you got your eyes on?
I'm gonna stick on the defensive side to begin with, and I've got my eye definitely on Mitchell Melton. I wrote about him after, last week or so when we had him, but just because, oh my goodness, the trail that guy has walked just to maybe this is the year, right? But man, if they get from him what we saw on MAD Media Appreciation Day, if they get that for a season, wow, that's eye opening. This guy was basically just a do it all sort of linebacker coming out of high school, and that's why he caught Jim Knowles' attention. When Jim Knowles walked in and probably watched a little video of him from high school, but just the way he could be all over the field, he could play that Leo position. But he has grown steadily from what a 235 pound high school prospect to now 261 pounds. I just rounded off to 260 because 261, but it sounds good. 261 pound defensive end who is a marauder is the best way of describing the way he played the other day. And then you throw Kenyatta Jackson in on the other end, number 17 and number 97, along with Caden Curry. Those are three guys that are going to have a chance to flash on Saturday because what JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer bring to the program now. So I'm watching those guys. At linebacker, I can't help it, man. Every time CJ Hicks is on the field, I love watching him. Just is he going to be a regular performer this year? Is he going to be consistent? Obviously the Styles brothers, I'm writing a story about them as a matter of fact for this week, but the two Styles brothers, but Sonny in particular, moving from safety to linebacker, and how quickly he's picked things up, but also he, as we were told near the end of spring, he's still got some things to learn. One of those may be the whoa button, definitely know where you're going before you go there. So we'll see how that plays out. And then on the offensive side, I'm just like you. George Fitzpatrick, there's a name that came out of nowhere in a lot of people's minds, but they got to have that depth on the offensive line. You're not going to get away with this year after year after year of only playing 5, maybe 6 guys. And we saw what happened when we went to the 6th guy in the Cotton Bowl. That was the worst. With Matt Jones at center. Things did not work out in that game. There was something missing from either a pickup standpoint or just guys not playing well. And it's funny, that Donovan Jackson didn't want that to be the last, his last taste, and neither Josh Fryer, and right on down the line. But then I'm looking forward to. I think James Peoples is going to get a lot of chances. There's a guy that I think will open some eyes. And yeah, I'm going to say it before we go. Jelani Thurman. I was saying at this time, exact same time a year ago. Boy, does he look the part? But G. Scott seems to be the leader in that room. But you got to figure out a way to get Jelani Thurman more consistent and on the field, because wow, what he can bring to the table, I think is obvious to everybody. I think you agree. And several of those other tight end guys too. I'm not leaving them out just because we can't talk about everybody. And then finally, I'll end with this. Yeah, Jeremiah Smith. The video that basically I'm sure went viral if you make that one-handed falling catch the other day in practice that even wowed the Ohio State cameramen. Dude, it's just amazing, right? What the talent that's been put together here on this roster by Ryan Day et al.
Yeah. Jeremiah Smith's point, you have to think he's got to at least be in the starting conversation. I know what they typically do with these wide receivers. They ease them in. You hand out the baton. We've seen it with all these guys the last few years. Even Carnell Tate had such a great spring, but played, a little bit more than most freshmen would, but still didn't get the full run.
Not as much as I thought he would. I'm telling you. Go ahead.
I feel like Jeremiah Smith just has to start. I don't know how you can't start him. And so, yes, he's going to be magnificent. And all of these quarterbacks, as we mentioned, I think this is going to be really fun to watch. Even
Yep.
even Lincoln Keenholz, see where he's been, since the last time we saw him. I felt like that was a kind of an unfair first debut in meaningful action. He's put on, a lot more muscle since then. And I think he had some of the better, some of the most highlight reel worthy throws that we
I
saw at Senior
agree.
Appreciation Day. So all those guys, I think are going to be super intriguing to watch. And hopefully it's entertaining. They did offense versus defense last year, I'm pretty sure, in terms of the point scoring. So we'll see what they do this time around. But
Yeah. Hey, one of the quick I wanted to ask you before we go, and I'll be asking you this next week. We'll be talking about it too. From what you've seen of this team, is this one of the top two teams in the country in your opinion? I mean, do you see what the ballyhoo justified?
yeah, I mean, this was the number one team in the college football playoff rankings last season. And I think this team is so much better than that we saw. I think what was that going into the Rutgers game last
Yeah.
year? And I think you've upgraded at quarterback. I think the offensive line is better this time around. You've gotten an even more talented running back duo. Wide receiver, you lose Marvin Harrison Jr., who is irreplaceable in some ways, but now you've got another phenom seemingly there. And Emeka Egbuka, I think people forget all the time, is a star. And last year he wasn't able to really be that just because of injuries and whatnot. But this team is loaded offensively, and they're even more loaded defensively. And as much as we talked about the offense today, you could just write a book about everything they have defensively.
Yeah.
And I think also the coaching staff changes, I think, elevate this team. I think the moves they made this offseason, Chip Kelly taking over as play caller, being the offensive coordinator, and Jim Knowles now having a little bit more free reign, having things in order from last year, knowing what did work well and what he can expand off of. I think the coaching staff is just as important as all the talent they have on the roster as why they are one of the top two teams.
I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the incomparable Anders Backstrom. Who's, I'm taking his black stripe off. Actually, I think I took your black stripe off about a year ago, didn't I? Anders, I'm trying to remember. Did you keep that? Did you keep it as a souvenir?
It's somewhere back there with all the helmets.
I got you. Yeah, I think I see it on that Clemson helmet. Maybe I'm wrong, but Anders, I mean, excuse me, Andy. Thanks for joining the Tim May show again, man, and being my co-pilot.
Thanks for having me on, Tim. Ready for this coaches clinic and another spring game.
That's
Get it?
exactly right, man. I'm gonna be sitting there watching Chip Kelly draw up plays. I'm front and center. I got to do a little bit of radio on Thursday night, but I will be hauling rear end to get there in time to watch some of that, because that's one of my favorite things to do is to watch, listen to other people. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, I do listen sometimes. Listen to other people talk football. But until then, and until next week, we'll see you then.